Now, Ukraine has said it's experiencing the biggest bombardment of the war so far, including more than 700 suicide drones from Russia. At least 2 people have been killed. Well, Fox News correspondent Ben Hall was himself caught up in a Russian drone strike while covering the war in 2022. He suffered near-fatal injuries and was told he'd spend the next 2 years in hospital learning to walk again. But just 6 months later, he made it back home to his wife and 4 children. He says positive attitude and a determination to keep moving forward saved his life. And he explores how he made it through in his new book, Resolute, how we humans keep finding ways to beat the toughest odds. And I'm delighted to say that Ben joins me now. Ben, welcome to Times Radio.
Thanks, Hugo.
Great to have you here. Look, let's begin by talking about drones, because drones have come to define this conflict. They've become part of a daily life for Ukrainians. Tell us a bit about what happened to you when covering the war.
Well, it was just at the beginning of the war, March 2022, and we were just outside Kyiv, and I was with my team from Fox News, and our car was targeted. Now, we are still unsure if it was drones or artillery, and there are war crimes investigations going on at the moment, but they targeted our car specifically. The first bomb just landed 30 feet in front. The second bomb landed alongside us. That was one that blacked me out, shrapnel in the eye, and actually I had this amazing moment at the time where I saw my daughter right in front of me. Everything was black and peaceful and dark, and I saw her. She's 7 years old, and she just said to me, Daddy, you've got to get out of the car. You've got to get out of the car. And it brought me back, and I opened my eyes, and the flames were around me, and I reached for the door of the car. I took 1 foot out of the car, and the third bomb hit the car itself. And so, I've no doubt that my family or what they gave me saved me that day, but it began this really difficult 40 minutes where I was on the ground, badly injured. It put out the flames on me, and it was the beginning of this long journey, both to get evacuated from a war zone, which took a couple of days, with no pain meds, barely alive, and then to 6 months of finally getting back home again. But you talk about drones, and they have redefined warfare. They've redefined Ukraine, and we saw 700 plus fired yesterday. So it's a new face of war. And
one can fall into the trap of thinking of drone warfare as a more clinical, less human, less immediately visceral form of warfare. Of course, you're the living proof that's not the case. Look, when you returned to work in Washington in 2023, there was a standing ovation for you in a State Department press briefing. Did it feel like you'd come to represent something more than what simply happened to you? Something about the press operating, the freedom of the press to operate in a war zone, the importance of doing so?
Yeah, absolutely. And within a few days of being injured, one of the first biggest thoughts on my mind was I had to go back to Ukraine. I have to show that they tried to attack journalism. They tried to silence us that day, but they haven't been able to do so. And I finally took a train back in just under 2 years later to interview Zelensky. And I got off the train, and I really felt that you won't silence us. We will keep reporting. You might try to stop it. And so, I think that journalism is more essential than ever. And I think, look, it's a dangerous role that we play covering conflict, but we have to keep doing it. We have to keep telling our readers and our viewers what's going on. Now more than ever in the age of social media, you need to know that people are on the ground and not just relying on videos that they see. So I hope that to a certain degree I stand for the continuation of journalism and showing that no matter what you go through, it won't silence us.
I mean, we're speaking at a time, of course, when international journalists are still not allowed into Gaza. Presumably you'd consider that unacceptable.
I think absolutely there should be journalists in there straight away. I think that we should be able to go wherever we need to go, and I think that there is no longer the protection that journalists once had. There's no longer the access journalists once had, but then that's on us to keep fighting for it, just keep reminding, keep talking about it. We should be able to go everywhere. And look, back in my early days as a freelancer, that involved, wading rivers up to your necks in water to get into Syria behind enemy lines. It involved, bartering your way onto fishing boats to get into Libya, so you find ways as best you can, but Gaza, that's almost impossible.
Yeah, but look, each chapter of your book, Resolute, takes the reader through different aspects of your recovery process. What was the most significant turning point for you?
Well, I wrote my first book, Saved, and I was absolutely amazed. We got to number 1 in America, and everyone loved what happened. But the question was, but how? How did you get through the most difficult moments? And there were quite a few of them. And for example, the train ride out, 10 hours, no pain meds. You have to learn to put the pain to one side, and you find a mental strength that you don't realize you have. And many people ask themselves, do they have that kind of resilience in them? And I actually think that when your back is to the wall, when you need to find it, you really can. But it's being able to harness and challenge that. So through the recovery, when I was learning to walk on my prosthetic legs and learning to see through one eye, I always saw the positive sides in it. I always knew that I was still alive. And the other 4 people with me that day, including our cameraman Pierre, our fixer Sasha, they died. And so during the recovery, I felt really optimistic. Whereas when you get back home, actually, and then you try to rebuild your life and the new person you are and what you can and you can't do, that did become difficult. And there were moments where I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Can I just get back to being a journalist? Will I only forever be known as the person who got blown up? And in those moments, I found ways in which you can find the strength to get through it, and I write about them in Resolute. It is break things down into very small goals. Don't just look for the final goal. It is about adapting to everything that you see happening to you. Find a way around things, get over hurdles, and when things are difficult, pick yourself up, walk out the door and find something beautiful, no matter how small it is, even the darkest moments. And look, I learned that by watching people in war zones. You go to refugee camps, you go to Mogadishu, you go to Syria, and you see some of the brutal things, but you see more positivity. You see kindness and courage and bravery and families coming together. And I believe more than ever, and having seen the cracks and the division in this world, that there's more positivity in there. And it was realizing that, I think, that helped me get through, my injuries.
You make a really powerful point about the danger of thinking what I need to do is get back to how I was before, and actually thinking, no, it's about understanding, accepting, and to the extent one can, almost like reveling in the new reality.
Yeah, and it's not about running away from things either. I'm always thinking back to the moments, because if you hide from those things, if you pretend they didn't happen, that's going to cause even more problems. So it's not about forgetting the bad things. It's about embracing them, realizing they did happen, and then moving on. And look, you can do it by yourself, but you can do it even better with a community around you, with a family around you. And I really think that, I've spoken to all my doctors, and I always asked, I was treated by the military. Half the soldiers come out of it feeling stronger. The other half lose their identity, they get bad PTSD, and we've seen the terrifying statistics of suicides amongst veterans, particularly those injured. And I said, what makes the difference? Why do some come out positive and some don't? And all my doctors say, those with a strong family and community around them tend to come out better. They have people to fight for them, and they have people to fight for. And I was always expecting a more complex answer, but really, if you break it down, it's who you're surrounded by, and it's about working with them. But I would say that's 80%. 20% still has to be you. It is hard work. You got to put one foot in front of the next. And so it's about not just relying totally on other people, but it's about using them when you need their help and finding that balance, I think.
You've also written a children's book, which is going to be out next year. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's called Read All About It. And wherever I travelled in war zones, I carried this little toy hedgehog with me. And it would send messages home to my children. If I didn't want them to see where I was, it would send videos back. It was with me during the attack in Ukraine. It was in my body armour. And it survived, obviously, as did I. But I had bad facial injuries. I lost part of my skull in the eye and things. And I didn't want them to see me in hospital. So again, the hedgehog sent the messages back to my children. And it became a really important part of our relationship. And I finally brought the hedgehog back with me. And so this book is about the little hedgehog who goes off. He saves the forest from the big brown bear. And he wants to be a journalist like his dad, and he saves the forest effectively by writing news reports, by telling everyone in the forest to prepare and to get ready. So it's something I did with my children. They helped me write it, and it's sort of a continuation of this little hedgehog, which means so much to me. And it comes out in March, and actually immensely proud of it. Never thought I'd write a children's book.
Oh, wonderful!
Enjoyed it.
Look, finally, Ben, what do your kids think of the work you do? Do they think you're a hero, or do they have the same indifference to Dad's work as kids tend to?
I'm just Dad, got the robot leg. But I do find it's fascinating to talk to them about conflict and why it's important to do the job we do. And more than anything, it's their role next, their generation, that there will be cracks, divisions, but they are going to have to heal it and put it together. And I think journalism and knowing as much as you can is one of the best ways of doing that. So I don't know if any of them want to be journalists, but if one of them said to me they want to be a war correspondent, I would say, do it. And I say that with all my injuries as well. I would say I think it's so important. Make sure you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, but it's essential. So I would encourage it.
Ben Hall, what a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Resolute, how we humans keep finding ways to beat the toughest odds is out now.